Welcome to the Homestead Podcast. You are joining co-hosts Carol and Jamie of twogalshomesteading.com. If you found yourself here, that means you are ready to take responsibility for what you eat, your family's health, and your family's well-being while living a simpler life. You can do this and have fun, saving money along the way. Let them help you unleash the homesteader within. By doing more with less, you will gain what is needed to create confidence, impact, and change in your life and the lives around you. Let's start homesteading. Let's start now.
Today we have a guest in our studio. This is our first guest we've ever had on the podcast, and it happens to be the local butcher out of Kerkhoven, Minnesota. So I'd like to introduce Thad Erickson of Full Circle Meats On the Road Custom Cutting. Welcome, Thad.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, so why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I'm from the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. I've been a meat manager at the grocery store level for more years than I'm willing to admit. And during the pandemic, my hunting buddy and I decided that we wanted to take that to another level. A lot of the farmers that I knew and grew up with from the Rush City area were having trouble moving their pigs. There was a lot of trouble with the larger processing plants and that type of a thing. So we started on-the-road custom cutting, where we would go up to the farms, harvest the animals on site, and then bring them back to the cities to get directly to customers. It was a lot of fun. So we decided to take that into a full-time operation, and we're fortunate enough to find the shop here in Kerkhoven. And that's what brought us out to your neck of the woods.
Oh, okay.
We are a full service, full process butcher shop involving everything from smoked meats and on the farm harvesting to animals being brought in, strictly on a custom cutting level at this point.
We'd like to thank PicoSupply.com for co-sponsoring our podcast. I get a lot of questions.
Absolutely.
As a producer or a farmer as to, how do I go about ordering a beef, or how do I go about ordering a hog? The biggest thing people ask is weight and how we determine weight.
Absolutely.
And a lot don't understand what hanging weight is, live weight, and most know what live weight probably is, but the hanging weight versus dressed, or what I get after you've done your thing.
Absolutely.
So can you explain that a little bit?
As best I can. There's a lot of variables in that, is why it gets so hard to explain. It also depends on type of animal, breed of animal can have a lot to come into that. But a live weight, of course, is as the animal's walking around on the farm, and that's just where it's at. Hanging weight is what's derived after we've harvested the animal, eviscerated the animal, skinned the animal, and it's literally then hanging on a hook in the cooler. And so that's where you get to the hanging weight. What the final yield then comes down to all depends on what the customer wants back. Okay, so we can save all of the offal meats, all of the heart, the kidneys, the pancreas, those types of pieces. If they don't want that, obviously that wouldn't go to them, type of thing. If they want all of their product boneless and ground up, obviously you're not going to get the bone weight then that you normally get back as well. So that becomes the challenge on that, is managing that. On average, if you look at the live weight of the animal, it's usually going to be about 60%, with beef at least, about 60% becomes the hanging weight. And then depending on what they want back, now so many of your customers are so good about wanting everything. Exactly. And wanting the bones for the bone broth, because bone broth is life, and this type of stuff, that their yield, the final yield of what's going to show up in their freezer, is considerably higher than what would be for somebody who would be doing a more traditional cutoff of it there. So you can end up expecting close to between 65 to 75% yield back in those types of scenarios. So if the animal started out at 1,200 pounds, then we're going to end up with about 700 to 750 hanging on a hook. Of that 750, you're then going to be looking at, whatever that comes down to. I don't have my calculator. I was just going to say,
I go like, what did that be? 500 and
5 to 600,
something in there.
Between 5 and 600,
depending on if you want the internal stuff, the liver. And I had somebody ask for, what was it, the tripe?
Yeah.
Yep, and that added a considerable amount of weight to the
Oh,
animal.
absolutely.
Yeah, you had said it was considerable.
Yep.
So yeah, that does vary. So when Thad is here and he takes a beef, let's say we were just going to use beef for an example right now. So the hanging weight is minus the hide, minus the blood, well, I shouldn't say the internal organs. It kind of depends.
Yeah, depending
You
on-
take the internal organs, well, except for you don't take the intestine.
Yep.
Usually don't take the stomach.
Correct.
Yep. And the head's gone. And so that's,
Yeah, all of that.
all of that is gone.
exactly.
So he's just basically got a carcass.
Yeah.
And that's where your hanging weight comes from, plus whatever the heart, that type of
Correct.
thing.
Correct.
Is there anything on the animal that the person cannot have?
The only part that we're not allowed to give back is the lungs.
Okay.
That's it's a major problem. The USDA and Minnesota Department of Ag will not allow us to give back the lungs. Their concern is TB,
Okay.
tuberculosis, and that's the way it is,
Yep.
type of thing.
Yep.
So that's just it's a rule, and we like to play by the rules whenever we can. But I mean, I've had customers ask for the trachea, the tube going up to the lungs. They then smoke that off and use that as a dog treat.
Yep.
So-
Yep. I've seen that on Chewy.com where I can buy the trachea.
Absolutely. Others want the hooves for. I have absolutely no idea, but they want the hooves. They. This type of thing.
Yep.
Especially in a homesteading situation, you might, when you're looking at what animals to bring to your farm, your yield can really be dependent on that as well. Pigs, you get a higher yield because more of it gets used in more ways. Goats and lambs have a very, very high yield.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so because really all you're losing is the hide, and a lot of people want those hides to turn into throws or blankets or that type of thing.
Okay.
So there's you can get a lot higher yield on those types of animals than you can off of traditional beef, let's say. So
Okay.
when especially with some of your listeners might be interested in what animals to have, end yield can be a major factor on that. So
Okay.
it works out as well.
Okay. I guess I didn't realize that there was a higher yield on goat and sheep or lamb.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you can come out a lot, and a lot of people, especially a lot of the customers that are buying goat meat, have a much greater appreciation for the sweet meats, if you will.
Okay.
They'll use more of those types of pieces.
and the sweetmeats are for someone who doesn't know.
Yeah, okay. That's your organ meat.
Okay.
The organ meats, the internals, that type of stuff will be used a lot. I mean, even the sheep's stomach is used as a cooking bag in some cases. That's traditional. So
Yeah,
all those types of things can come into play and can be a better value off of it. The look on your face when I said using the stomach.
Yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, I've heard that before, but it was like, oh, don't know how to.
Yeah, no, it's a whole nother category, and
Yep.
it's amazing what can be done. I have some customers that are from, say, India, and we do a curry cut on a lamb, and you literally start at one back leg, cut it all into 2-inch chunks, and pretty much everything is being used at different types of curries.
So do they cut the bone too? I mean, are these chunks? Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's literally taking it on the saw, zip, 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 all the way through, and
Oh, how interesting.
it's just a different way of using the animals, and it's fascinating.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah.
That's-
We've had people out here when we had more goats that we used for meat, and we had some from was it Kenya,
yeah.
I believe, and they were out here and they just bought the animal and they processed it here on the farm.
Absolutely.
And literally, when they skin them, the eyelashes were still on the goat hide. And they did a beautiful job with the goat hide. I actually saved a few of them.
Absolutely.
But they took everything. They took the eyeballs. There was nothing left. I mean, literally, they tied what they had left was probably like a lunch bag,
Yeah.
a lunch sack and it was all tied up and all nice and neat. And all we had to do is drop it in our compost pile.
Yep.
That's all that was left. They took the intestines. They just took just about everything off of that animal. There was hardly anything left.
Yep. It's just a more efficient use
Yeah.
of the animals.
Yeah.
So a lot to be learned there.
Yeah.
A lot to
Yeah.
be learned there.
So, okay. All right. Let's see. What else? You have a question for him, Jamie?
Well, here's one that I had to do a little research to come up with questions for Thad and for Carol as a consumer, because I have never personally as an adult raised animals to be butchered. I've always bought mine. And as a kid, my mom and dad did all that. And so my thing is, how do I would assume that either you or Carol would help a customer. Do I need to buy a quarter of a cow, half a cow, or should I buy the whole cow?
Okay.
That's a great question off of that. And you want to jump in on this one first?
Well, off of my farm, I prefer not to sell anything smaller than a half a beef, simply because we have small animals. You know, our last hanging weights on our beef were 400 and something and 300 and something on the last two animals. And, you know, that fits pretty nicely into an average deep freeze.
Correct.
As
So
a whole animal.
that was whole hanging?
That was a whole animal.
Okay.
And you
and
compare
then-
that to other farmers in
Yes.
the area, so that you can be looking at 1,100 pounds
Yeah.
hanging weight.
Yep.
And that changes the question considerably.
Yep.
So is that just because of the breed of animal you have, or
Yes.
because you're grass-fed, grass-finished?
No, it has more to do with the breed. You know, we have Scottish Highland cattle out here, and they're smaller. They're just a
Okay.
smaller breed. And then, of course, if you're picking out of my dairy herd, we've got Jerseys. And our Jerseys they're just not big. You know, they're not big like a Holstein or a brown Swiss or something like that.
Okay.
We just have smaller animals just due to their breed. And yes,
Okay.
ours are 100% grass-fed. So that really affects more of the fat that you get
Correct.
on your animal. And our fat is extremely yellow.
Yes. Yeah.
We have, when he processes an animal out here, I just can't believe how yellow our fat is.
Oh, okay.
As
Yeah.
opposed to a grain fed, where you get that very white,
Right.
you know, and there's also just simply not a lot of fat
Yeah.
in the grass fed to begin with. So it's a completely different critter is what it boils down to between the grass fed and the grain fed. I agree completely as far as the half an animal. There's a lot of specialty cuts that you only get one per half of an animal.
Oh,
So
okay.
there's only 2 flank steaks on the entire cow, one on each, on the flanks. Right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that gets you your flank steak, that gets you a hanger steak, that gets you all the specialty cuts from that side. You're going to get the full amount of flat iron steaks and those types of pieces that I have no way to really break those down into
You can't break them into 2 quarters.
Yeah, exactly. So it allows you to get, you know, a better experience. From my perspective, you're going to get a richer experience out of the deal by getting at least a half. And with your size cows, that works out just fine.
Yep.
That's a great way of going.
And then, of
about
course, you only have one heart,
it.
Yeah.
only one tongue,
Yep.
you know, and so somebody, even if you're getting a half, you might not get those. The liver, you can probably divvy that up.
Yeah.
But it's
it's harder to do with the pancreas. Kidneys, there's 2 kidneys, so you each get a kidney. Those types of pieces. But yeah, one person ends up with the heart, the other one ends up with the tongue, you know, type of thing, and it just sort of works its way on through. But so a whole, if you have the space for it, you know, a whole is great. If you don't have the space for it, a half is all right. If you don't have the space for a half, well, get a quarter. You know, that'll at least it'll still get you a better yield of a better tasting meat that's been taken better care of, than at a better price point usually than what you'd find at the grocery store.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, so that's a lot of good factors going into that. Now, one question I had for you, Carol. I flipped it on you here. What factors do you bring in when you're determining the price per pound for hanging weight? How do you go about?
Oh
that
boy.
process?
I guess I just kind of look at the markets, and I also check what the equivalent is in the grocery store.
Yeah.
To see what grass-fed meat is going for. And to be honest, it's sometimes kind of hard to find that
Yeah, at
locally.
all. Yeah.
Locally. You know, Azure carries some of that, and I sometimes have to do some online searching to see where we're at. And then I also consider, am I willing to pay that price myself?
Yeah. At the end of the day.
That's a big thing. Yep.
Yeah.
If I'm not willing to pay that much, I don't expect somebody else to pay that much. And so that's just kind of how I go with it. You know, grass fed, you know, and it might be different if it comes out of our organic, because our dairy herd is certified organic. If we're picking from there, you might pay a little bit more because they are organically certified organic cattle, where our beef are fed organically, but not certified. I can't always say that they have certified organic hay. I can say they have pasture, because our pastures are all organic, but not necessarily do they always get
Sure.
certified organic hay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're 100% grass fed, and that for most of my customers is more important that they're antibiotic free, medication free, and they're 100% grass fed than being certified organic.
Exactly.
That's the criteria.
And that's probably a great point to always make sure to know your farmer.
Yes.
Whenever
Yep.
any of your listeners are going to this, get to know your farmer.
Yes.
And learn to trust your farmer and what they have going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then everything goes so much better.
Yep.
So that was one of my questions for you, is like, how was the animal raised,
Yep.
and then how was the animal finished? And you guys have covered that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a big thing is I always make it very clear where the animal's coming from when somebody asks me about beef. You know, if you're looking for certified organic meat, then I need to look at the dairy herd. And if you don't, you just want 100% grass-fed beef, and then I'll pick from the Highland herd or our beef herd. I'm very honest with my customers.
Mm-hmm.
I think they trust me, and they know that I'm going to be honest with them about how this animal's been raised,
Mm-hmm.
and then whether or not it's always been raised here. Although we haven't brought cattle in for a very, very long time.
That was one of my other questions that I found that I hadn't thought of, because I've always dealt directly with farmers that I knew raised their calves for processing and stuff. But it was like, are your animals born on your farm, or are you a reseller where you go out and buy calves and bring them in and raise them? Because they said that the question was, that animals born on the farm, the farmer knew how they were raised and things they've gone through, whereas a reseller wouldn't know how the calf was born or what
if it was medicated.
Yes.
If it had the scours and they had to treat it for something or whatever. Yep. See, and I would know all that. The only thing we ever bring in here is a bull. We may bring a bull in for breeding, and that's about the only animal that comes on our farm that isn't born and raised here. You know, right now we have a Highlander from the neighbor who's over here doing some breeding for us, and of course he'll go back to his home, so we don't have to worry about that, because he won't ever get processed, I don't think.
Just not going to be part of
That's just not going to happen, I don't think. He's kind of a baby. Yeah, he is.
A big pet.
He's a big pet,
huge
yes.
pet, yep.
Yes, he is.
But yeah, no, that's I know some farmers that do just the buying the calves in the spring and raise them up for the year, and that works out okay. But it's different when you have a herd that's been curated for generations, like what's going on here, where you have these multiple generations of animals. You can trace a lineage back on those, and you can decide what characteristics you want in not just Highland, but in your particular Highland beef, or what characteristics you want in your dairy herd. That changes things considerably. And you can start working towards better meat better end product characteristics based off of that. So it can be a big, big deal.
I sell a lot of calves to people who want to raise their own beef, and I'm real honest with them. I'm like, I'll let them know if the calf had scours, if we had to treat them for anything like that. People know exactly what they're buying from me, whether they raised on mom, raised on a bottle, all of those things, are important. And I just think it's really important to know that just because your farmer is organic and raises organic, say, milk, and she has an organic milk herd, don't always just assume that the beef coming off their farm is certified organic.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are some that, I don't need to keep my bull calves or my steers organic because they're not going to go into my organic herd. So make sure you ask, has the steer, if that's important to you, has this steer been raised on organic feed?
Absolutely.
Because some farmers will not come forth with that information. Because I'll be honest, in our herd, and if I have bull calves that get sick on me and my treatments aren't working, and I need him fixed soon, I will resort to using antibiotics. But that animal is then tagged, that we know that it's been treated like that, and if it's ever sold, that information goes with that animal. It doesn't happen very often. It's usually a case of pneumonia that I can't get cured. That's usually what I'm treating out here. I've gotten really good, and I can see it coming on fast enough, and I can get my homeopathic treatments and my organic treatments to work, so I don't have to do that. But that is just something you really should ask, because organic feed's expensive. It's expensive. It costs a lot to raise an organic animal. And I totally understand why you don't want to put them on organic feed. I mean, we keep steers here that are from my dairy herd. They'll go in with the beef.
Yep.
They're raised with the beef. They're not raised with my dairy cows because it's too expensive to raise them on our totally organic, certified organic feed.
And they do great on the grass fed.
Yep, they do just
fantastic
fine.
on the grass fed. So yeah, and that's where I was talking a little bit about the how important that organic standard stamp is necessarily, because a lot of the things that you do are far and above what would be for an organic standard. Other places are very comfortable playing right to the line of what is organic and what is not organic, and adding other things into it that qualify as organic but aren't a natural part of the animal's diet.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yes, and see, for me, that's something that I was shocked at when we started in organics, and I was like, really? You can give all of that, and that's okay. Yeah, I'm not starting to do that. I know. I believe less is more, and it may sound cruel in a way, but I want the healthiest animals, the healthiest stock I can have out here, and I don't want to have to be treating my animals for sickness all the time. So my healthy ones stay, and the sickly ones go away, because they need to be able to handle the bugs on my farm and to be the strongest, have the best immune system for what is going on my farm. Now, one of my healthiest cows could go to another farm and she might not do so good because she's not used to those bugs over there. Every farm is different. But for my cows, I want them to have the healthiest immune system possible for the farm that they are currently on. To me, I don't vaccinate. Vet is out here maybe once every year, 18 months, something like that. And sometimes that's just simply because I need to get some kind of a medication from them that's certified is okay to give them, and I can only get it through a vet. And the vet has to be on my farm every year, has to be on my farm in the last 12 months in order for them to dispense that medication. Okay. I already know what's wrong. But there's nothing else I can do but treat it that way,
Absolutely.
And so that's the reason most of the time the vet is out here.
And that's where, when I was talking about a curated herd, that's exactly precisely what I mean. Okay, that's the right way for, in my perspective. I'm not trying to pick on the guys that are picking up their animals and raising up the cull cows and stuff like that. There's terminal breeding programs happening on most farms, and that's great. But this is a different level, and it makes things just a little bit more straightforward, I think, when you have that multi-generation thing going on. So.
Yep. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with picking up a bull calf, making it a steer and raising it yourself and taking it to the butcher. I mean, exactly what has gone into this animal.
Absolutely.
So you know exactly how it was raised. And I mean, if you're okay because you had to treat it with an antibiotic, you know what you're consuming. The big thing is that the consumer needs to know what they're getting. Yep. That's what's most important.
Family-owned PetecoSupply.com brings small-town customer service to their online farm store. PetecoSupply.com specializes in automatic waterers from top brands such as Miraco, Jug, Franklin, Trojan, and Ritchie, as well as other products for your operation. Find your farm supplies and automatic waterers at PetecoSupply.com. That's PETECO Supply.com. Petco Supply.
Okay, now did we get off topic? I'm not sure.
Oh, I'm sure
where
we're
are we at?
far afield at this point.
Yep. Oh, we were speaking of things that you can keep off of the animal. And so, my customers, my customers tend to utilize just about everything. The only thing I've only had one person take a hide with.
Yeah, that surprises me a little bit.
And I think sometimes it just intimidates people, having to process the hide, and I've tanned before, and it is labor intensive, and I was just doing goat and rabbit hides, and it's a bit but now people don't think of taking things off of a hog. But I do have one customer that likes the trotters, and she was like, she says to me, "So can I have the trotters?" And I'm like, "Okay, you have to tell me what is a trotter."
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I'll have to ask that. Yes, you want to tell us what trotters are?
Okay, so the very lowest portion of the foot, okay, that last joint where you have the toenails, and
Yep.
I love the expressions on your face as I'm telling you about this sort of a thing.
Like, I would not have thought.
But by steaming that last little piece of foot, it cleans off well. You can take the toenail off, leaving a wonderful bit of collagen there. And then we remove the skin from that area. And then you toss it in a pot and you get a really thick, heavy, hearty soup out of it.
So they're gonna like make a bone broth, soup broth.
Yeah, with about 3 times the amount of collagen that you'd normally get in bone broth. So it's, there is a value to it, but it's a real pain in the butt to do. I'm not going to lie. That's not my favorite thing to do. But, just like everything else, the answer is always yes, and then we figure out how. It's just the way we do it. But, yeah, you got to put that foot into scalding water to get those toenails to pop. And then that just comes off with a pair of pliers.
And you do all that. You prep all of that for
So
my
then
particular customer who wants those feet. And that's exactly what she said. It makes the most marvelous bone broth. And she says, so I really want those. So that was something I had never heard anyone talk about on a hog. And, I don't really hear a whole lot of people who make like pork broth. Bone broth. That is just something that they don't do, and I don't know why.
Well, I think a lot of it is because when you're dealing with the larger bones on the pig, that the bone in the ham, that stays in the ham, and the bone in the shoulder, that stays in your shoulder roasts. And you use the baby back ribs as ribs, and you use the spare ribs as ribs, and well, golly, there's just not much left for bones.
Okay.
So there's no soup bone really in hogs.
Correct, unless we do a boneless ham. I can process down to a boneless ham, and then you'd get that one bone off the leg. But otherwise, there's just not much. There's not much.
I never thought of that because I was like, how come nobody does that? But
But then we do take, the ham bone, and I make bean soup with it.
Absolutely.
So I'm not making a bone broth with it, but I'm making an awesome soup.
Yeah.
And you are still getting the
collagen,
the collagens and the marrows from that bone. Okay, they've been salted, but you're still getting that back into your diet.
Yeah.
So it's still there. It's just, and the bone from the shoulder from when you do your pulled pork, you can take that bone and make a great split pea soup out of that and all that kind of stuff. So it's still there. It's just
different than a cow.
It's
than a cow.
different than a cow. Oh,
Exactly.
I had never thought of that.
It's also why the yield is higher on pigs then, because all those bones are
added.
Exactly.
Are included back into the weight.
So.
Yeah. Oh, look at how we're learning.
Yeah,
Oh,
even,
goodness
yeah.
gracious.
And we brought it all the way back around to the initial question on yield.
Yield. There we go.
Did. All right. Okay, so let's talk about grass-fed versus
Sure.
feedlot type grain-fed. Now, I have learned with our beef, because they're 100% grass-fed, that our beef has to hang.
Yes.
Because we've had beef that you cannot chew because the butcher would not hang it for me long enough. Let's talk a little bit about hang time, why it's important.
Absolutely.
Do you do it in beef and in pigs, or do you or how does that work?
Because that was one of my questions for him, is how long will it take to get my meat once it's been processed?
Okay.
Oh,
At the
all
farm.
ties together. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
it all ties together.
Okay. So our shop, we recommend between 10 to 14 days minimum hang time
For
Cow.
for cow.
Okay.
For cattle in particular. Lamb and sheep, I want it chilled to the bone, so maybe 24 to 48 hours, and we can get started on that. With pork, pork's sort of a fluid one on it there because, depending on the breed, you might want a longer hang time, but when you deal with some of the heritage breeds like the Mangalistas in particular, their fat is so heavy in omega-3 fatty acids that it has to be absolutely chilled thoroughly to the bone. Otherwise, you can't cut the fat; it just smears like butter. So it's a big time.
when you're hanging a pig, then you are hanging it and aging it as it's freezing. Is that what you're saying?
Between 35 to 37 degrees
Okay.
is where the cooler sits. It has to be below 40 at all times.
Okay.
Okay. They're just like every everybody who's ever worked food service will tell you between 40 to 140 degrees is your danger zone. You
Okay.
want to keep the meat out of that zone and cool down as quickly as you can. The cooler, the better for pork. I want that chilled right through the bone if I can, because I'm going to get a cleaner cut. I'm going to get a better finish on the presentation of the product. The main reason for hanging beef is you want the natural enzyme action to take place and start breaking down the fiber in the meat. Okay. That changes it. Also, at the same time, you're removing some of the water weight of the downside of the hang time thing is that you do lose on your yield a little bit. So it was, you could lose 5, maybe even 10% of the water weight of that. The fat that's in the meat or on the cap of the meat will replace that inside the meat itself. So the fat cap will be different. It'll still be juicier because the fat is now replacing the actual water weight that's in there.
Okay.
So you're getting a juicier steak out of it by letting that hang time happen. You're breaking down the fibers and helping that work out. And for us, the sweet spot, I guess, is that 10 to 14 days. Some shops, if you go to a high-end steakhouse somewhere, you'll find meat that's been dry aged for 45 days. Mm-hmm. And the amount that they have to trim off to get down to the meat inside is painful. There's a rind that forms on it.
Oh, just like cheese.
Just like cheese.
Okay.
There's a rind that'll form on the meat, and you have to trim all that back in a way to get to the actual serving
Good
portion.
stuff.
Yeah, to get the good stuff, exactly. And that causes and that becomes hard for customers to accept that they're going to lose, that. And once you get past 14 days, the amount of texture that's improved by that is minimal. So
Okay.
you get your greatest amount within that 10 to 14 day time frame, and once you get past that, it becomes such an incremental amount that the gain isn't worth the loss.
Oh,
Does
okay.
that make sense?
Okay.
Okay,
So,
yep.
we can go 21 days. We can go a little over that without really getting crazy as far as the loss. But for the very, very long hang times, it just doesn't become as necessary. Grass-fed in particular, I think grass-fed beef in particular really does benefit from that hang time.
Well,
It
I
becomes-
can tell you ours does, because the difference between our old butcher and you with our meat is incredible.
Thank you.
Yes, I can make a much better roast. I don't have to do so many things to it to hope it turns out tender.
Yeah.
That type of thing. I appreciate that you're willing to hang up. So now let me ask you this. So when you hang your beef or your hog or whatever, are you doing anything to it? I mean, does it just literally hang from a hook?
It literally hangs from a hook.
Okay. You're not putting anything on it. There's no salting it. There's no water added. No.
When in the processing or the initial processing, to get it to that hook, what we do, of course, is when the animal comes in, it's inspected, it's cleaned, making sure there's no visible bacteria or bacterial influences.
Yep.
So anything, especially when doing an on-the-farm harvest like here, there's always dust in the air.
Yep.
Especially with the winds we've had around here.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing that the shop hasn't gone off to Oz yet. It's a lot. But there's always going to be that dust. There's going to be dust in transporting it back to the shop. So by the time it actually gets on the hook in the shop, now it's going through with a small flashlight and just working right down the animal and making sure that all of that's taken care of. It's then quickly rinsed off with water. We don't want to use too much water because water itself can be a source of bacteria.
Okay.
Right? And then once that's all done, it's very lightly sprayed with a 50% mixture of water and 5% vinegar.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So just to put a little bit of an antibacterial layer to that to keep any surprises from happening.
Okay.
And then it literally goes into the cooler and hangs out.
Okay.
And just so it's just takes that bit of real estate for a few days and
Okay. How do you keep track of your?
Whose
take
hog is
yeah
food?
yeah I was gonna say,
Whose
yeah.
food?
So you take two beef off of our farm and 2 hogs on the same day. So how do I know that I got the right beef and the right hog? How do you mark that? How do you?
everything is marked. A tag is actually write a cardboard note card, if you will, and have that tagged, pinned right onto the meat.
Okay.
Okay, so every piece in there is pinned, and that pin stays with it.
Okay.
all the way through. So you have the farm name, date of harvest, the weight is all put onto that pin, jabbed into the meat, and
Okay.
that stays right. That follows through the whole process
Okay.
all the
Okay.
way through. And then when it comes up to the cut room, that tag goes out and is married up then with the order form.
Okay.
Because that order form would be on from the same day as well, and that's where it'll have the farm name, customer name, the cut instructions all go
Okay.
onto the sheet there. And you've seen those sheets.
Oh, yeah.
You see that sheet at least.
Yeah, I see that sheet.
And then the weight is then added to that sheet as well at that time. It's supposed to be added to that sheet at that time. There have been times when perhaps the weight didn't get put on the sheet, but those sheets then stay together until it's cut, wrapped, and put into the freezer. Then that order sheet supplants the tag that was in the cooler.
Okay.
And the order sheet then follows the bin of meat through till the customer gets it. So
Okay.
you have a full chain of custody right on through. And then that's all marked off. It was harvested on the farm, and then my records then will show that what's harvested on the farm, what's harvested in the shop, on what day, addresses of where it was, of origin, address of where it was sent to. Disposed of. Sent to is a much better term. All those types of factors come into play so that we can make sure that we have that chain of custody, if you will.
Now, are these steps, are some of them required by the Minnesota law, or are some of them just your practices?
Well, although some variant of those steps are required by both Minnesota Department of Agriculture and USDA. How you choose to interpret that is up to each individual shop.
Okay.
So Minnesota Department of Ag is kind enough to offer us a blue book, okay, and it's actually a record-keeping book. And it works. It works very well. I find by using my records in triplicate, I'm able to keep a better log of that because then I have those in order rather than transferring it over to the blue book. So I don't use the blue book.
Okay.
But
And so you're not required to use the blue book. It's just provided for you.
it is provided,
Okay.
and it's not a bad system of working it. I find using my records and keeping my records my way works a little bit better for
Okay.
me. So my interpretation of the rule is I must have the record.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a book that has a little blue cover on it, or whether it's these individual sheets, as long as I have that record of every animal that comes through the shop.
You can reconcile where it came from and where it went.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's the key to it there is making sure that can reconcile, because heaven forbid something happen and we have to track back to a farm where, not here necessarily, of course, but it should something have been discovered on a farm, mad cow disease, whatever it might be, we need to know where that meat went and then where it was
That
sent
makes
to.
that
and
makes
type of
total
thing.
sense.
So it's important that we maintain that record and that chain all the way through. So
Okay. Well, that's interesting. So I'm just like, what do you do?
how does that work?
How does that work? How do you keep track of it?
Yeah, and where it gets tricky is, with pork in particular, is once we start using the brining buckets, because I take a pork belly and I put it in the brine for the 2 weeks in the brine that it goes in there, I have to keep track of which one is stacked where inside that barrel or inside that bucket.
Oh.
And
Yep.
so on my sheet, on top of the bucket, then is, okay, John's here, the Dove's there, all the way
Yep.
through the whole thing. I'm making sure that I have all those stacked up and then try to maintain one farm goes in. So if I bring 2 pigs in, okay, well, that's going to be 4 pork bellies. Those 4 pork bellies then get stacked in, and each individual customer then has their layer in the bucket.
Oh, okay.
So that's where it gets a little
I
bit
was gonna
more
say,
funky,
Yeah.
But you got to have track of
You
all
got to
of that.
be able to keep
you know.
track of it. Yeah. Okay. So now you mentioned the cutting sheet. How does one go about getting you the information they need so you can cut the way they want
Absolutely. And every shop's going to be a little different.
Yep.
So mileage may vary on this one. Okay.
Yeah, because I was going to say, my question was, will most butchers walk you through the process of choosing your cuts and how to do it? Because I've done it with you, and it was totally different than any other shop I've ever done.
In my less than humble opinion, okay, every shop should
Yes.
walk you through every cut and what you're going to do with it and what you're going to make with this when you're done and this kind of stuff because, okay, you're a gardener. You're a fantastic gardener, okay? When you take a bite of a tomato raised in your garden, that first bite tracks all the way back to every experience that you had raising that tomato, right?
Oh, yeah.
In my opinion, when you're buying meat, that experience should track from your first contact and agreeing to buy the meat until the steak is done and sizzling on the plate. Okay, and that first bite should involve the entire experience. So I want you to be excited about the meat that you're getting. Okay, so I want to walk through every bit and piece on that to make sure you know what you're going to get, why you're getting it, what you're going to do with it once you got it, all these types of things. And then when I get weird calls about what the heck's an osabaka or whatever,
I had that one.
When I make an osobuku for you and I tuck it in your bin and you don't know what that to do with it, that's part of it. That helps create an experience for you. You know, it helps create something a more fun thing. So I want to watch. So I find a great value for me in being able to be of service that way, to be able to walk through all the cuts. Other guys want you to go online and click the box on their cut sheet of what, how big of a steak do you want or how big. And if that works for them and that works for the customer, yay, go team. But I think both sides miss out a little bit if you don't take the time to do that. So at our shop, what we do is, okay, we've come out here, we've harvested your animals. No more tears on that one.
No, we're good.
Okay. Just double checking.
Yep.
But yeah, the harvest the animals here, bring them into the shop, get the weights. I contact you, Carol, with the weights, and then you say, okay, here's your customers. And then I'll contact you. And we contact the customers and go, okay, so here's what we got. What do you want me to do with this thing? And then we start working it right through all the cuts I usually start right at the nose.
Yep, that's what he did with me the first time.
Starts at the nose.
And we'll go all the way to the tail. And you tell me what you want. And I think it's a way to create a little more excitement. I think it's an opportunity to create a better experience. And, oh yeah, he mentioned oxtail. Yeah, well, that's what this is. Now what? And call me back. I'll be glad to tell you what to do with oxtail. I'll be delighted to show you.
So the question is that whatever...
The osobuco?
Yes. Tell them what to do with it.
Okay,
because they're going to go, what is this?
Okay. So, yeah, the osobuco is the shank meat off of a cow. So it's the shank bone and the meat. I call it a crock pot hand grenade.
Oh, it's so good.
It really is pretty tasty.
So good.
Okay. You throw the whole thing in the crock pot, let it do its thing overnight on a low heat. Okay. The meat will literally fall off the bone. The bone will come out hollow because all of that marrow is now totally absorbed up into the water. Throw in your veggies, roots, whatever you got handy. Add barley, add potato, rice, whatever floats it for you that week. And you end up with something kind of magical out of the deal. It ends up being a really, really good.
Because I have that package in there going, what is this?
I know. Mine popped up and I was like, okay, what is this? And I messaged him and he was like, well, this is what you do. And that's exactly what I did. I put in a crock pot. I actually started in the morning.
Okay.
I did what he said. I added carrots and celery, onion, and I put barley in there. Oh, that was fantastic.
Absolutely.
It was really good. I'm like, oh yeah. I hope there's more in my freezer somewhere.
It's a great way. And this is, again, when you're talking about, the ham bone that you're making the soup out of. This is that meat and that bone together, and you're getting a really deep experience with the flavors that you can get out of that. You end up putting in less salt. You end up putting in less other seasonings. You just don't need to, type of stuff, because it just comes out with just the flavors itself, just shining through. So.
Yeah, it was really good. The other thing, because of my customer base, there are certain things that I need to know when you're processing the animal so that it doesn't end up in the waste bucket.
Yes.
For instance, pig ears.
Yes.
I have trotters.
Uh-huh.
What else have I had where I'm like, we need to make sure that we keep
the not the pancreas, the thyroid glands.
There's a few things that get tossed. And I need to know those. I need to know those things.
Absolutely.
Tripe is another one.
Tripe is a great one.
Yep.
A bull's testicles,
Yep.
Sexual organs are a thing. It's a thing.
She's told me.
She said, I have customers who want all those things off the animals. And
absolutely.
So those are things I try to make sure that when someone's asking me about our beef or about our hog, that I make sure I'm like, okay, now do you know about this? And do you know about that? Do you want this? Do you want that? Because those are things I need to let him know when he's here. Yep. Because once they are at the bottom of the bucket, the waste bucket,
we're not fishing it out.
Are not getting that back.
Nope.
Yeah. So
I have yet to find a volunteer for that particular job. So it's going to be, that would be a nope.
Yeah. So, the bull penis, the
Yeah,
penis.
yeah.
That is something that we've actually harvested out here. Made it into
a lovely walking stick, actually.
walking
so.
stick. So, yes.
Okay, that's a new one on me.
Actually made that for your husband, actually, if I get right down to it.
I haven't seen it around the
No,
house.
it's actually still in the
it's
shop
still in
here
the shop.
right now. So
Maybe Christmas.
Yeah.
Christmas.
Well, he was having trouble walking for a while, so we thought we'd do
Yeah.
something kind for the guy, and
Yep.
there goes the surprise for Christmas.
Yeah, there you go.
No, you
Oh,
keep-
He might be surprised.
You just be quiet now, okay?
Yeah, nobody tell Bob anything. Yeah. So
Okay. Let's see. What else did I want to talk about? If you, as a listener, are curious, you can go to Thad's Facebook page.
absolutely.
The on the road.
On the road custom cutting.
You can go there, and if you look back to June of 2021, he actually has pictures of what a half a beef looks like, cut up one way.
Yeah.
As it says, you can do other things, but it does kind of give you a visual of what a half a beef looks like at that particular weight. I don't even remember what the weights were or whatever. I don't know if it was our beef or not. I don't remember. There was also one of half a hog.
Yep.
And so it's kind of nice to be able to just see it,
Visualize.
and it's not packaged or anything. It's just all the meat just laying there out on the table. And it does give you a nice visual as to
This is what I'm getting.
This is what I'm getting. I can get, about this many steaks and a couple of roasts
Yep.
or, that type of thing. And
Absolutely.
so that's a really nice
Thank you.
visual.
Absolutely.
Because lots of times people are like, well, how much, what does a 200 pounds of beef look like? Oh, I don't know.
A great way to, the way I like to describe for a lot of customers is with one of your beef, imagine the biggest bins that you can buy at your local Fleet Farm or running store, or the big 27-gallon black bins with the yellow lids type of thing. That will hold about a quarter of beef or about half a pig.
I know, it just
Okay.
shocks me going, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, I always think you think of a hog and it's like, that should be overflowing, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not.
Exactly.
Because I just picked up one last week.
Yes.
I picked up a hog last week. So it's like, oh, okay, that's right.
Yeah,
Your
it's-
hogs are smaller than the one I got from another farmer last year.
Yeah, and that's where it all starts with the live weight, hanging weight, the final yield. It all depends on the animal itself.
Yep.
When you get down to it on that.
One question I had about that is, tell them how you package your meat, whether you vacuum pack it, freezer or what is it?
Freezer paper? Yeah. By and large, I recommend freezer paper. We do vacuum seal for customers on request, but we do have to charge more for that. It's an extra 15 cents per pound based on the hanging weight, because those darn bags are so expensive.
Yep, they are.
I definitely recommend, if you're looking for longer term storage, more than 2 or 3 years, the vacuum sealing does make some sense. Okay. By and large, though, most of our customers are buying with the intention of using it within the next 6 months to a year. And the freezer paper, if wrapped correctly, is going to handle that just fine. And it just becomes a good, cost-effective way to get the meat.
I think, because I still have some of Carol's beef in the freezer, pulling it out. I just did a roast last week, and it's still fine.
And that was from a while back now.
That would have been December when we butchered the dairy bull.
Yes. That would be that one.
So so that's coming up on a year.
Yep, coming up on a
And
year.
if you're using it within a year and a half, you're totally within as
Yep.
far as the paper goes. If you're planning on longer term storage, there could be a good argument for the vacuum seal bags. One thing that I would definitely recommend is if you're planning on using a sous vide style cooking, the vacuum seal is wonderful because you're literally taking the food from the freezer, putting it into the sous vide pot, setting the wand, and leaving it alone. Okay, so you don't have to worry about vacuum sealing it before bringing it to the sous vide pot. It's already done for you.
Okay.
Got one step done anyway.
Yeah, one step done. And so I enjoy that for my own cooking because I like to use the sous vide whenever I can. It's easy to do. It'll hold the same temperature for 8 to 10 hours without a problem. And then when you're ready to cook, it's 2 minutes in a frying pan, just putting a browning to it on the outside, and you're done.
Okay, so we're talking about vacuum sealing.
Uh-huh.
Now, you have showed interest in borrowing our Avid Armor vacuum sealer, chamber sealer.
Absolutely.
for
Absolutely.
to use in your shop, and so we're very excited to.
Oh my!
It's actually sitting right next to him.
Yes, I just noticed. I've got this great companion sitting right next to me. This is an amazing
So
thing.
he's going to give that a shot in his
Absolutely.
shop and see how that works and give us a lovely review on that.
I can tell you right now off the top that it's going to be fantastic. I like the depth of the main chamber there. I'm very impressed. A lot of them don't have that much depth. So
Okay.
one of the concerns whenever going to chamber sealing, of course, is considerably better than just regular vacuum sealing. When you get your food saver, vacuum sealer type of thing, right? The problem with that is that you're going to lose moisture inside there.
Yes.
With a chamber like this, well, I'm sure you know you can do anything. You can vacuum seal soup. You can vacuum seal milk, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
It's a different level of work on that. The trick when doing it with meats is having it chambered deep enough to be able to handle a larger roast.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So now you're going through everything. This is fantastic. And then you get to that ham. And there's no way that you can fit that thing into the chamber. But I can tell already that that one has a deeper, a better design to the lid that's going to create a better chamber than a lot of the other ones I've seen out there.
Okay.
So I'm very excited to see how that plays off.
Okay.
So,
All right. Well, we'll be.
I might change my entire opinion on paper wrapping if we're not careful. So.
So how about I know you offer, smoking the bacon and brining and all that stuff, but what about the person who's like, I want to make my own bacon and ham? Is that an issue for a butcher or?
It shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be, because really it's one step easier to
Okay.
do. Most of the butchers that I know would be happy to set up a kit if they want. I'd be happy to set up a quick brining kit for somebody who wants to do their own ham type of stuff and just explain, okay, this is what you're going to do. This is the thing you're going to need. Get your Traeger set up or get your grill set up, however you're going to do that, and go for it by all means and help them through some of the basics, or at least show them some websites where they can set up their EQ brine. It's not a difficult process. It just takes space and time.
Okay.
Because you got to keep that brine in the refrigerator. So, now next thing you know, you're getting scolded by your spouse for 3/4 of the refrigerator taking up with all of this smoked meat, type of thing. Or God forbid you actually have to use the beer fridge to do it yourself. And now you don't have room for the beer. These are serious problems, So
Beer in a cooler.
Yes, exactly. It's a problem. So it depends. But yeah, it shouldn't be a problem for somebody
Okay.
who wants to do more of that to get up even a 5-minute education and at least a good attaboy, go for it type of thing. I imagine there's butchers out there that just want to do it their way, and that's just what they want to do, but they're wrong. So
Okay. Okay.
it
Or
shouldn't-
there's like me that sometimes I'm leery. I have to watch a lot of the seasonings and the brines that some butcher uses have
yes,
MSG and ingredients that some people may not want.
exactly.
And so I always, until this last one,
Yeah.
have always gotten just fresh side and ham steaks.
Absolutely, and that works out great. And that shouldn't be a problem for a butcher to do that. Sometimes it can get, depending on the volume that the shop does, it can be challenging to be able to adapt your recipes to make sure that you're meeting the dietary needs of your customers.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That can be challenging. I had a customer just today now ask that we please use celery powder rather than the standard pink salt for making they want to use an organic nitrate rather than using the pink salt's commercial nitrates. So happy to do it, but it's just one more step, type of thing.
And it will cost you more probably for that.
Well,
because
yes.
that ingredient's not
Yes.
a little bit, it costs a little bit more for you.
Yeah. So then you have to adapt, and it's changing gears and this kind of stuff. And just like when you buy, you buy the candy bar or the Hershey's candy bar that says 100% chocolate, right? And it says warning may contain nuts on the bottom of it. Any shop, there's always, and I don't care how clean you are, I don't care how good you are, there's always a possibility for cross-contamination.
Yes.
So the shop, my shop does have the pink salt nitrates in it. Therefore, the possibility of exposure is there. It's present. I can't promise 100% because it is in the shop. You know, every possible measure is taken to ensure no cross-contamination. But if your allergy is that sensitive, get salt pork or get
the fresh side.
Get fresh sides. You know, they taste fantastic, and do them up yourself. There's other curing techniques that can be done at home. There's smoke boxes that can be built, salt boxes. You can salt box at home without a problem. It's just a matter of time and space, you know. So, but yeah, make sure to talk to your butcher about that before you start the process. You know, if that's something that needs to happen, that might be something as a producer, as a farmer, that you want to make sure if there's any particular dietary considerations to have that mentioned type of stuff, so we're not three-quarters of the process.
I usually do. I was like, you know, 'cause I do get a lot of questions, you know, about what you do actually use in certain seasonings and stuff. And I usually tell them, you need to talk to Thad, because Thad knows what he uses, and I only can tell you what I've heard or what he's told me in the past. But, you know,
that could change. He may have been doing it, and now he may have changed his recipe.
You need to talk to him to make sure that you're getting what you want, because he's very willing to please.
Yeah. And I would say most of the butchers out there would be willing to make some, as long as it's not, you know, I need you to completely sterilize your smoker between every piece of bacon that you make, and that type of thing. As long as it's reasonable and understandable, I would say probably most of the guys out there should be willing to do it. And if not, give me a call. I'll do it.
Yeah.
One of my question as a consumer was, we're fortunate to have a few butcher shops in our area.
Yes.
I don't know if that makes it easier to schedule the processing and the harvesting. So who schedules it? Do you schedule it? Because I have heard some places that the customer has to schedule it.
Okay. For me, off of our farm, Thad and I correlate as to when we're going to harvest. I usually have to make for sure that I've sold the complete animal. That's the first thing when somebody says I'm looking for whatever, and then I usually try to be like, okay, are you looking for it in a certain amount of time? You know, are you looking for it in the next 2 weeks, or are you looking out at a month because you still have to empty half your freezer, you know, whatever type thing. And then I contact Thad, and then we decide. He gives me usually a couple dates or whatever, and I run it past the customer. Will you be ready? So if it's a beef and we're harvesting it on the 20th, now it's going to hang for 10 to 14 days. So now you're looking at another 2 weeks. So usually for my farm, I schedule it because my animals don't leave my farm live. You know, some people come and they pick up the animal and they take it to the butcher. And the butcher that then at the shop is taking her, which is a service that also provides.
I got a stock trailer, so you can bring it in that way.
He can take the animal in live if you want to. My customers prefer the kill to happen on the farm, just because it's supposedly less stress for the animal, not so much for the producer. But they just have that one moment of bad, and they're not stressed out because they're in a trailer, because most of my animals have never seen the inside of a livestock trailer. Some of them have, because Madison, of course, has shown animals and that type of thing, so some of them have. But for the most part, they don't know what a livestock trailer is, and it can be extremely stressful for an animal who doesn't get hauled to be put in there. So
that's actually a great point when you start dealing with transportation stress of the animals, and you compare. And I'm going to make you cry, Carol. I'm sorry. I know this is going to happen. But when you compare what happens here out at the farm, where it literally, if all goes well, it's a moment and they have no idea what has happened.
Yep.
Okay. Or they can be compare that to what happens with your grocery store meat. Okay, where the animal's picked up on the farm, put into a trailer, taken to auction. These are herd animals, right? So you've taken them from their herd, you've put them around same and similar animals that are not part of their herd. It's confusing. Water's available, but it's one drinking fountain in the thing. And I'm so sorry. I know I'm going to make you cry.
Okay. No, you're fine. No, I'm fine.
They go to the auction house, then they're purchased at the auction house, then they're loaded onto another trailer, then they're transported to
a facility
somewhere. Nebraska comes to mind. You don't know where the animal's going necessarily. It's then processed. Omaha Meats gets hold of it. It's then put into another stockyard with other animals that it's not familiar with. This is now 48 hours later, type of thing, of constant stress and anxiety. with no idea what's going on. And the animals will actually lose weight, like serious poundage of weight.
Well,
Because they're not eating and stuff like
they're
that.
not eating,
know-
they're stressed, they're,
for instance, you take an animal to the fair, now, and especially cattle. Cattle are just terrible for this. And our county fair is inside the city limits, so
Yeah.
the cow has to drink city water.
Yeah. Oh.
City water doesn't taste
No.
like, so you have to disguise that water somehow or another. A lot of people use Gatorade and stuff to put into the water to make it taste different. They might haul water from home to
Yeah.
make sure the animal's drinking. And just think about what this poor
Yeah.
cow is going through. You know, she doesn't have her friends anymore, her
Yeah.
family, you know, and whatever. And it's like, so that doesn't surprise me that they lose weight like that.
They're,
You know?
they're
Yeah.
down a lot. Just the water weight alone, the constant stress and the sweating out of all of that, and the adrenaline itself. Everybody who hunts can tell you about the deer they had to chase through the woods tasted tougher than the one that just dropped. Yeah, it's the same type of thing. You amp that adrenaline in these animals by racing them all over the country. It's going to affect the meat.
Okay.
It just does. So, like I said, the way that we tend to do it between the two of us here is you raise good animals, and I just try not to screw them up. That's kind of what it boils down to. It works out pretty good for everybody, I think. And on the farm harvest is a major component of that.
Yep.
Major factor of that. It's not the cheapest option.
No, it is
That's
not.
to be
'Cause
fair.
there is an extra charge for
Oh, okay.
for the butcher to come here and
Yeah.
harvest, and he literally stands outside, regardless of. Oh, we did postpone one time because it was just too cold. It was like January, and it was just too cold.
The snow was literally horizontal that
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
I
it was
recall.
just too cold, so
Yes.
we had pushed that back a couple days. I would assume the rain we were having yesterday probably would have stopped you. Probably.
I'd have been really grumpy.
Yeah.
Or even this morning, it was raining a lot
it
today
was
too.
raining,
Exactly.
So
It's-
those are about the only two things that really stop him. He butchers through the winter because we've harvested in December and January
Yep.
and February.
We've done midsummer in the heat.
Yep, in the heat.
So
Yeah, but it does cost a little bit more to have the
Yeah, I
animal
don't even
here.
notice it or don't know the difference because it's just included in the price.
Right.
Yeah.
That
It's
price
just
is
added
passed
into there,
Yep,
yeah.
it's passed
Yeah.
on to the customer.
so yeah.
So, because I know, I pay you per pound, right?
Yeah.
Processed pound?
No, per hanging weight pound.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
My prices are all based on hanging weight pound.
And that's already, and so for the fee to come out and harvest it is already included in that?
that normally would be a separate line item.
So maybe
But
somebody
it's in
should
there.
read their ticket closely.
Just
So yeah,
works
it would
that
just
way.
be added into the total
Okay.
cost of the
He
animal.
just gives me a cost and I pay it.
I got to add more zeros. I'm missing this.
Unless it was
opportunity
outrageous, then I'd go, huh? Why?
Why is the extra zero here?
Yeah.
But-
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a thing, but no,
Yeah.
it really depends. I prefer on the farm harvest as far as that goes, but the logistics can be a challenge.
Yep.
We're very fortunate. You guys have a way of lifting the animal here. Other people it might not apply to. Let's say they're inside city limits, and our method of dispatch is a firearm. And so that could get a little hairy if
Yep.
I had one farmer that had a ethical stance against firearms and didn't want firearms used on his property at all, but still wanted to do on the farm harvest. And it was like, well, this isn't going to end well for any of us. So we can't do that. I will need to bring a firearm out here, and we ended up using a very small caliber on his pig, and it worked out just fine. And really, the shot is about off of 22 isn't much louder than a 2x4 hitting cement, falling flat on cement. So it's not a loud bang, but it is a bang.
Yeah.
It's just,
Okay, so like with goat and lamb, are you able to not use a firearm? Because I know the Kenyans that were out here, they just slit the throat.
I still use the firearm.
Okay.
It's just the 22. Simply because the downside of that, though, there is a downside to using the firearm as the method of dispatch, is that now I have a lead projectile, and therefore we can't harvest everything in the head.
Oh, okay.
Right. Because we've put lead into the brain. We can't use that. That now.
So
becomes-
someone who's looking for head cheese, say, for instance, off of a hog,
exactly
is not
we'll
going
need to. Yeah, we'll need to find a different method of dispatch for them, and probably. That gets a little bit tricky at that point. There are other things, captive bolt stunners and this sort of stuff, but for those you have to have a direct exact contact with the head to use the captive bolt stunner. So now we'll be racing around all over the place trying to get right up and be touching the head.
So you almost have to have some way to contain the
you'd have
animal to be able to do something like that.
Because otherwise out here they're just doing their thing.
Yeah,
and
they're just doing their thing, and
that becomes pretty easy when they're just chill and doing their thing. And,
yeah.
You know.
I can't imagine trying to do a cow.
Yeah.
Or a beef animal with like slitting the throat or whatever.
Yeah.
The size of the animal just doesn't seem to be.
Yeah.
And certain. I don't know all the rules. This would be a great one to ask an actual rabbi about. But with kosher, they have a rule about projectile being used.
Okay.
So you're back to the knife.
Yeah.
I have I've never actually seen that done. I've seen halal use with the goats and sheep. And again, there's no projectile used. There's no stun used.
Yep, I was going to say, they just slit the throat, and they had to have the goat had to be laying a certain direction.
In relation to the sun.
In the relation, there was, they're like, which way is north or whatever, and they had to have the animal laying a certain way. But, goat is not a big animal.
No.
Yeah.
Where you're looking at a cow. Now, most of my cows, you probably could walk up and give them a hug, and you probably could do it in the dairy herd, not in our beef herd.
Yeah.
But in the dairy herd, you might be able to get away with that because my cows are extremely friendly. But you're not touching any of those cows.
The problem is they're also extremely smart, so I'd only get away with it once.
Yeah, probably.
I pull up with my white trailer, and they're like, "Oh crap, there goes Mom."
I'm pretty sure our dogs don't like the firearms.
Yeah.
So
Go fig.
but anyway,
Get a little doggy headphones or something. We'll make it work. It'd be awesome.
what's the difference between country ham and ham?
That's a great question. That I have absolutely no idea. No, you're kidding.
Don't tell me we've stumped
Oh
that.
shoot! I thought I stumped him. Dang it.
A lot of times you'll find most ham, of course, is the back hind quarter of the pig. All right. So you have picnic hams. Okay, that's the front shoulder that's been cured and turned into ham.
Okay.
And then when you get to a country style ham, that's going to have a higher salt content to it. Is really what it boils down to. A higher salt content, a higher molasses level. You're really kind of amping that stuff up. Usually it's a slower brining process. They're using a salt box brine. Okay. So with a salt box, you literally are building a box. And then you're putting your ham in there and you're burying it in the salt. And then
I've seen that on YouTube.
you're relying on the moisture evaporation and the salt to replace that in there. Okay, and that is now a absolutely cured meat.
So it is not smoked.
But then you'd smoke it afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Once you get the correct level on that, then you do a very slow smoke because you're basing that on water lost, or moisture lost from the meat. So you pull it out, and I don't have the percentage right in front of me right now. I have literally nothing in front of me right now. But yeah, you're going for a certain percent. So if the ham originally weighed 22 pounds, once it gets down to the 15 pounds or whatever it's supposed to be at that point, that meat has fully absorbed as much salt as it can. And then you need to release that somehow a little bit. So you rinse it off real quick, and then you'd hang that in the smoke, and then that smoke permeates up in there as well. So it's a much more traditional way of doing hams. And this literally could hang, in your basement, cool, dry, dark place for months at a time if you want, and be just fine.
Okay.
That's where the expression, having the neighbors come over to chew the fat.
Okay.
You'd have your ham hanging up there, and you'd cut off a chunk and share it around the table type of stuff and sit around chewing the fat. So
interesting.
There's your fun fact for the day.
All right.
All right.
We'll be quizzed on that later.
Next get together, huh, guys?
And this will also be the last time I do one of these without reading through your questions first.
Carol, as a customer, what forms of payments do you accept for your portion of the cow? And I know this. I know that I pay you for the cow, and then I pay Thad the processing fee. So what forms of payments do you accept here on your farm?
I take cash, check, and I also have Venmo. It's the same for selling milk or whatever. Those are the payments.
Your forms of payment.
Yep, those are my forms of payment. Yep. And yes, when and I expect payment within 3 days of me getting the hanging weight to the consumer.
Okay.
So once that lets me know, I let them know what the weight is and how much it's going to be, the total, and I expect to be paid within 3 days, or they're not going to get their meat.
Okay. And how about you?
Same across the board, but also including the credit card. Credit card payment does require an additional 3.5%.
Okay, so you recoup the fee.
We had to.
Yep.
It got to that
you're
point.
small enough that
Yeah.
It's
a huge chunk. Because in our business too, we don't charge that to the customer as of yet. Because my husband he's like, it's part of doing business, and so we
I
just
get it.
we just write it off. He goes, I'd rather get payment of some form and have to pay that little bit, because we've had some customers not pay us.
Yeah.
So then I know this, of course, because I've done it plenty of times, is who picks it up from the processor. I read somewhere that some farmers go and pick it up, and then you have to come to the farm to pick it up. But I'm thinking, ooh, that would be a huge freezer thing to go to the farmer.
Yeah.
Whereas I've seen both, so I always pick it up from you. So is that normal, or?
And again, mileage may vary on this one. Okay. We're a little weird on this one.
Yep.
But both of us, because there's been times where, since Carol with the milk, it's very easy if one of her milk customers that comes out every Tuesday to just swing out here with one of my big coolers, or two big coolers in one case there, and just drop the coolers off in the morning before the customer gets here, and then they can pick it all up at one stop right here.
Okay.
Of course, Carol's only 10 minutes from town anyway, so it's not a huge hardship. Because of where the shop is located and the fact that my family still all lives in the Twin Cities, I make the runs to and from the cities basically every week, which means that I can offer free delivery into the Twin Cities market for Carol's products. It becomes very easy for a customer in the cities to order from out here, to have their beef, once it's done, just dropped off, because even if they're up in St. Cloud or down by Shakopee, really that just depends on which road I take back into the cities from here. So it becomes a very easy thing to help with delivery on that, to be of service in that way, that other shops might not.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a very unique situation that you can offer that.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's kind of part of the, I guess, what do you call it, the secret sauce of what we do that other shops might not be able to. But I think traditionally it's stopped by the shop to pick up.
Yes.
Yep. I was going to say, that's what I did when we used a different butcher.
Yeah. I
we
think
always went up and picked up our beef.
I've always gone in and picked up from the butcher.
Yeah. And I think that I like that, because again, that adds to some of the experience that we're, when I'm talking about eating your experiences, so to speak, that adds to it as well, to actually be able to see the facility a little bit. And most butchers should be relatively comfortable with you walking through. Now, obviously, if they're in the middle of an animal in the back, that you might see more than you wanted to, but it becomes part of the thing. Is where this is where my meat came from. This is where my food came from.
And being comfortable with their shop.
Exactly.
Yes.
So here's a thought. Have you ever had anybody come in and want to inspect your shop before they agree to use you?
No, but I'd be welcome to.
Okay.
I'd be very welcome to somebody doing that anytime.
Okay.
It should be show up before 8 in the morning, and I might not have had my coffee yet. But other than that,
that could be scary at my house.
we shouldn't ought to do that. But just let me know. Come on by anytime. Don't let me know. Come by anytime. The state inspector does that all the time. We should be inspection ready at any given moment.
Do you do on-farm processing every day of the week, or do you just kind of? And we usually are on a Monday or a Tuesday. It seems
Correct.
like is that what you prefer? And then it's shop work after that? Or?
Well, that's the plan.
Okay.
And I plan, and God laughs.
Yep,
so that
you've
works
told me
out.
that before.
So, yes, it's
Must be true.
Yeah, it's just the way of it. The plan is to harvest on Mondays and Tuesdays, simply because my rendering service, where all the stuff that nobody wants goes, that's where it goes. Shows up on Wednesdays. Okay, so to have that out of my shop, especially in those lovely balmy summer days, it becomes a very good idea to get that gone, the bulk of it gone as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So that's where I like to do Mondays and Tuesdays. Then of course you have emergency situations where a cow has an injured leg.
Yep.
And that's
We've had you out here for an emergency.
And when that happens, then off we go. And it's not, not ideal anymore, but that never happens on a Monday and Tuesday.
No.
It's going to happen Wednesday afternoon right after the rendering service leaves. And that's just how it goes, type of thing.
Well, then, it's deer season here in Minnesota right now.
Yep.
So are you like swamped?
Surprisingly, not as swamped as I thought I would be.
Okay.
We definitely bringing in deer. I think we've had some weather challenges this deer season.
I was going to say, it's been kind of a rough week here.
Exactly.
It really has been. We've had a lot of rain and a lot of wind, and it has just not been user-friendly, so to speak.
So I think, at least from the websites or the Facebook groups that I'm with, I think a lot of people are down on their
numbers and stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
But yeah, deer season's has been interesting this year across the state, without a doubt. So but we're bringing them in, and we'll be open again this weekend to bring more in and see how that all works out.
Yeah,
so at the same time, though, and we were talking about scheduling earlier, scheduling up the animals. I work really hard. A lot of shops are booked out a year and a half in advance. I don't know how they do that. I don't know how they can be booked out. I mean, in some of these cases, that means that the piglets haven't been born yet and they're booking out a date at the shop. Okay. We tried that for a little while when we first got started, and it didn't work well because you'd have these dates booked out and then people would cancel on you. And so now you suddenly had holes. So I work really hard not to be booked out more than 2 months at any given time. If I keep the schedule tighter, it's easier to try to find somebody who would like to receive a pig or would like to receive a quarter of a cow than it is trying to fill a slot. And thankfully you pretty much have availability on demand. So it works out good.
Yes, it does.
We're bringing in averaging about two cows and at least 1 or 2 pigs a month.
Now we've got 2 steers right now that we have ready that could go any time, and we've always got hogs. Hogs aren't a problem at all for us. But I don't know why suddenly we have a market or whatever. But it is nice to have a butcher that's available to me, because the other butcher, lots of times I had to, like you're saying, a year in advance. I mean, I just asked them not too long ago. She wasn't even sure that they would still be coming to the farm anymore. Well,
because as a consumer, I'm not looking out, a year from now I am going to need some type of meat. But I'm pretty good about foreseeing, I need to get through the winter. So I don't start thinking about getting beef until July, August. Or a pork. October, was that? September, October, I start thinking I need a hog because I'm getting down there.
But now compare that to the non-homesteading consumer who is just trying to figure out what they want to have for dinner this week.
That's true.
Okay. That you're now looking that for an advance. That's a great lesson for all homesteaders to start looking to that 3-month mark or that 6-month mark rather than just this week's supply of food type of thing and how to go about doing that.
Yeah, because I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast or just out, that we might have been talking about the freeze dryer, that a lot of people are looking at the freeze dryer to prep and have, 5, 10, 20 years worth of food storage. I'm not there. I look at 1 year. I'm growing my garden this year and trying to harvest enough to get to harvest next year to rebuild what I've used over the winter. That's how I operate.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I could ever get beyond that. I probably could. But that's where I'm at right now.
And a lot of people today they don't even know what to do with a whole hog or even half a hog, because they don't know about all those other cuts. They do pork chops, pork loin, pork roast. And they don't even consider, because I've had that too, and I'm like, talk to Thad. He will tell you what these meats are for, what the cut is, what you use it for, how to use it, how to cook it, especially cooking it with our grass-fed beef. There is a learning curve there. You need to learn how to cook because grass-fed beef cooks different than your grocery store.
You don't have the marbling and everything in it to rely on for flavor.
Exactly.
Yep. It's different.
We might have to have Thad back for a cooking
Yeah, we can do that.
lesson.
Yes.
I'm in.
Cooking,
Yes.
cooking
Absolutely.
talk.
Yep.
Tell us how to cook all this meat that we just got.
There we go.
Pencil and your pad out, guys. Taking recipes.
That's what people are always like, well, we have 100% grass-fed beef. And they're like, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And I'm like, have you ever cooked it before? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. So now you need to learn.
You need to do some research.
A lot of people around here do venison and stuff like that. So it's similar to venison and stuff. But I would say a lot of our venison around here
It's more
is
grain
corn,
fed.
corn fed.
Yeah.
Because corn and soybeans are the huge thing here.
Absolutely.
I've had venison from Bemidji.
Well, and see, and the grass-fed can be so good if you treat it right, But it is a different critter on that. It's almost a different species. It feels like in a lot of cases, just because like I said, you're not hiding behind the fat layer. It's really just the meat. You got to figure out what you're going to do with this now. And makes for a good thing.
Have you anything more to add? Thad?
Just that if anybody needs any help with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out either through our website of On the Road Custom Cutting, through our Facebook page of On the Road Custom Cutting, or Full Circle Meats, or feel free to give me a call at 952-452-4807.
All righty.
How's that for a commercial?
Sounds good.
Okay, well...
Guys, thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you
for
Meant
taking
the world.
time out of your busy schedule because this is taking cutting time away from you, I'm sure.
Well, yeah,
but
we'll make it work.
I'm sure the listeners will appreciate little
there's
insight.
a lot. I wish I had this when I bought that first quarter of a cow, or no, pig. It was first quarter of a pig. Probably 33 years ago.
Well, and don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be delighted to have, if any of your listeners tend to send you any questions, be happy to jump in on that.
Oh, we might just have you back.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, that would be great.
I would be very welcome.
We'd like to give a special thank you to PicoSupply.com for sponsoring our podcast. So until next time.
Put some kefir on it.
Thank you for listening to the Homestead Podcast's latest episode. Your hosts, Carol Radke and Jamie Kappas, are Two Gals Homesteading. To learn more, go to twogalshomesteading.com or the Two Gals Homesteading Facebook page at facebook.com/twogalshomesteading. Editing, audio production, and marketing of the Homestead Podcast is the responsibility of Media Transx. The Homestead Podcast is an audio product of Media Transx, a limited liability company, based in Minnesota, USA.